Do not answer fools according to their folly, or you will become one. Or you might become one. This is one of the proverbs from the Old Testament. Donald Trump, President Donald Trump, finally vindicated for the bogus, and it really was bogus, I call it the Ministry of Silly Walks impeachment trial. And here's why. Nancy Pelosi, the insane, she would make a wonderful villain in an animated movie. She's absolutely perfect. Have you seen? I don't even want to give. I don't want to product place without being paid for. But Nancy Pelosi, she's a comical villain. Is what she is. She's a comical villain. She's hilarious. She really is. And the Democrats in the late hours of the impeachment trial, the bogus impeachment trial in the Senate, essentially challenged the Republicans to, they basically said Donald Trump is a very, very bad man. He's a very, very bad, and they said this 1,000,000 times over the course of a week, and they did it for the benefit of the television cameras. They knew they didn't have anything against him because President Trump didn't ever do anything wrong. Didn't ever do anything wrong, and they told President Trump, the Dems and the leftist fake news media tried to get on the Republicans this has been their strategy over the years, and it's always worked because people used to take the fake news at face value as if it weren't fake news. But Donald Trump comes from media, so he understands media. That's why he won the election when Hillary Clinton could not, because the Dems are always, they have one playbook. It's undermine America and use the fake news media propaganda to get their in where they don't have wisdom. Use repetition instead. Use their baked-in propaganda machine at Communist News Network, CNN, PMSNBC, and the rest of them. And the fake news media, even though the Democrats hadn't actually presented any legitimate offenses against the Constitution or anything else, that in their quest to remove President Trump from office, which they've been trying to do since the first day, because they don't care about the Constitution, so they don't take constitutional precepts seriously at all, which is why it's really difficult to take anything seriously that a communist Democrat says, especially when we all know that they're not Democrats, they're communists, and they're trying to derail America for good, for their own political ends. Nobody knows that better than America's man's man, because I grew up here in the hub of the universe. Thank you. Where the leftist communists have just communism has overtaken the churches from within, such to the point where America's foundational churches here in the hub of the universe are now flanked by communist rainbow flags promoting sodomy, as if. And I mean, talk about a theater of the absurd, but. As it turns out, our Supreme Court has not risen above the fake news propaganda machine. That's why homosexuality is legal in the United States today. So, unfortunately, the progressives have been progressing us for millions and millions of miles in the wrong direction for the last century, really, since the advent of broadcast and before then, but that's when it really accelerated. And that's why we're in danger. That's why we have been in danger of running off a cliff. But President Trump, again, he comes from the media world. He's been steeply involved in it. He's well acquainted with the quirky, weird, megalomaniacal divas and talking heads of the fake news media. and he's not impressed by the info babes or the or David Moore, ABC News, reading off a teleprompter from Baghdad. Seriously, that's. Thank you for watching the evening news. Anyway, so anyway, do not answer fools according to their folly, or you will become one. So the Dems throw this, like a 5-year-old who's been watching TV, or that brat in Switzerland or wherever the hell she is, wherever the heck she is. Sorry. Wherever the heck she is, who was traumatized by fake news propaganda, fake news global warming propaganda. She's like, geez, if I don't start doing something, then I'm gonna burn up. So obviously President Trump doesn't have this problem of fake news psychosis. President Trump is one of God's prescriptions for the end of fake news psychosis in America, because it's gone too damned far. We've got homosexuality legalized. We've got all manner of. So the Dems throw all these bogus charges, and you got all these people on the communist side, and they say the most ridiculous things, and they're just throwing things at the wall, hoping that something will stick, because they don't understand American law. They don't understand America's Constitution or her solid foundations in the Bible, which is what America fundamentally is. It's a biblical moral enterprise, as Rick Santorum once famously said. Of course, Rick Santorum couldn't carry the day because, again, he didn't understand the concept of fake news psychosis. And Rick Santorum is also a Catholic. And the thing about Catholicism is it's a wonderful religion for creating obedient children. But see, the thing is, when Catholics grow up, they find that their religion is completely useless because it doesn't. It's wonderful, and actually, it's quite damaging in a lot of ways. For reasons I'm not going to go into here. But the main thing is that it doesn't provide an actionable faith, an applicable faith for adults. It just doesn't. It doesn't work that way. And this is why. And there's a lot more to be said about that. But what are the lessons here? Because we don't. Again, I don't want to suffer. I don't want to entertain fools, and I don't want to entertain foolish ideas like Catholicism, because I want to try to live out the principle I'm trying to demonstrate here. So it's like there are cults, for instance. There are other cults I've been engaged with in the past, and my more my less learned days as a less mature Christian. And we're all in the process of growing, so we're learning exponentially as the Lord God allows. And there was a time when I answered cults according to their folly, and I'm not going to give. It would be silly of me even now to give free product placement to these cults. But that's the thing. That's how stupid people get themselves in a whole lot more trouble than they would otherwise be in. Or actually, it's almost like they create trouble for themselves, because they don't back away from fights with people that honestly they don't really. It's not necessary to fight with, and so. And so they simply just waste a whole lot of time and personal energy and that derails them from their life purpose, which, if you're an American, is to make America great again, in whatever way God is calling you to do that, in that grand American Christian tradition, which we're so blessed to inherit, that makes us the most blessed nation, which is what we mean by when we say America is an exceptional nation among nations, blessed by God beyond any other. And it's our responsibility to keep it that way. It's our divine inheritance. And you can take the real way to do that. You can listen to the real foundations, the real words of our founders, the real Christian zeitgeist that made this country everything it is. If you have half a brain, and again, I don't mean to be condescending, but again, anyone with eyes to see can see that this nation is inherently biblical from the ground up, and I touched on that in the last episode. But the communists, the Democrats, offer a very cheap parody of the American dream, a very cheap hack imitation American dream. It's the American dream of imitation sausage, with all the rat feces, all that junk that gets into the sausage that you don't know about. That's the communist American dream, because they don't understand it. They don't understand that the primary, the driving force of the American dream is Jesus Christ, because that's what this country was implicitly, so implicitly that it never had to be stated in the Constitution, and never was conceived a time by our founders when it would be necessary to have to name Jesus Christ as and Father God and the religion of the Puritans and the Bible as our Creator, who is named in the Constitution of the United States. So, and if you look at any lesson books from early America, Noah Webster's spelling book and the like, you will find that every single lesson that was taught in this nation up until we know that President McKinley, on behalf of the United States government, sent missionaries overseas. Okay, just to give you an idea, when I say we're a Christian nation, the phrase separation of church and state is only in the Constitution if you get your education from the fake news. and what is it? Anti-Christians litigating unjustly, the ACLU. Anti-Christians litigating unjustly. I don't even think they mean well. I think they're malicious. I think Jay Sekulow gives them a lot more credit than they're due. The ACLU, anti-Christians litigating unjustly. Anyway, excuse me. Still getting over that cold this week. So don't answer fools according to their folly, or you will become one. Now, many people, if you took your run-of-the-mill Republican who is really a hack, most of your senators, they're not. Most Republicans are completely out of touch with not only American people, but again, America's foundations. Most of them, if they grew up, if they're in our Congress, if they're in the Senate or the House today, they were miseducated, they were indoctrinated by government schools, public schools, you may call them. They were indoctrinated such that they've been sold lock, stock, and barrel on this idea of separation of church and state, and they did not pray when they went to schools if they grew up after about the 60s or so. So they don't have that God center. They're not reading their Bibles every day. They think it's irrelevant. They think it's irrelevant. As many of you watching this as a consequence probably do. Why? What's the point of the Bible? It's like, I get that. God. This is what Catholics say. They're like, I have a guy filling in for Rush the other day. He's like, I'm a Catholic, but and that's because when if you're a Catholic, when you grow up, you suddenly your faith has no relevance because again, It is. You can't. When you're a child, you have to learn to rule. You learn the rules, but when you're an adult, you learn to apply them, and you learn to break out of that kind of rigidity. And Catholics can't do that. They can't do that because there's an obsessive rigidity, which is implicit in the Catholic rigidity, and more than that, this rigidity is inherently tied in Catholicism to a worship of women made of stone, and so there's a pornographically sold rigidity, which is lock, stock, and barrel, part of the Catholic religion, which makes for a lot of adults that now the Catholics these days, and I say this having been one at one point in time, they grow up and they realize something's terribly wrong, but they can't put all the pieces together. They don't have the tools to do that because they don't have that Christ person at the core of their being, and so all of this to say that. All of this to say that, and again, this has to be addressed because I have to address it because I know there are a lot of people who have Catholicism has gotten its hooks in American theology, and it's perverted it to a large degree. And the Vatican loves to mess with American theology because, well, I mean, the Vatican's just doing what it's always done. It never liked the Puritans. The Vatican did not bid the Puritans safe voyage to America. And the Vatican does not believe in American exceptionalism. They just don't. Jesuits promoting promoting atheistic communism, or they won't call it that, but they're promoting communism in the United States overtly. And the Jesuits have written books about why communism is so wonderful. It doesn't take a theologian. It doesn't take a corrupt Gordon Conwell seminarian to figure this out, folks. Anyway, so on that note, you have the corrupt Gordon Conwell seminarians. Well, what's wrong? What's wrong with a little, like in Brave New World? A quote from Brave New World I remember pretty vividly. It always stood out in my mind. There's nothing wrong with a little homosexuality, There's nothing wrong with a little homosexuality, and this is why in the pulpit today, you have that pastor talking like this, who's not married, and you don't know what his deal is, but he talks like that, and he's we need to pray for those people because they're not in a good way, and they're making twice the hypocrites of their congregation than they are themselves. And so at the end of the day, the congregation isn't taking them seriously, so the congregation is going to be taking their worldview, their spiritual advice from what else but David Muir, ABC News. Which is owned by Disney, a company with zero integrity and zero sincerity, although they work very hard to convince you otherwise. Their latest movie is all about values. Oh, we have values here at Disney. Values. Walt Disney would be so ashamed of what Disney is today, and Disney needs to go and repent. Anyway, but so... do not argue with a fool, lest you become one. Do not answer a fool according to his folly. So the suggestible Republicans, whom the fake news normally is quite successful at working up into a tizzy over nothing. Watching the fake news. We even had some Republicans who were like, well, gee, CNN is saying this about, we've got to bring the witnesses. And meanwhile, Nancy Pelosi has essentially brought the equivalent of Monty Python's Ministry of Silly Walks against the president. Well, we've got to impeach the president because the president is violating our Ministry of Silly Walks. And that's really what it amounts to. It's That's really what it amounts to. The Democrats made this kind of this silly farcical funeral procession when they delivered the fake articles of impeachment with no credibility to the Senate. They didn't call their own witnesses, but they expected the Republicans to, they thought they could goad the Republicans into calling their own witnesses. And here's the thing, even though the Democrats had nothing, and the communists, and they don't have anything, they don't have any spiritual foundation, Nancy Pelosi making a parody of religion while she murders millions of babies daily in the abortion mills. And again, this is what happens when Catholics grow up. They have no frame of reference. They have no worldview except that which the media feeds them. And, at a time when the fake news is failing because Americans can see straight through many Americans are awakening to the immediate lies of the fake news, but America has not yet awakened to just how warped a century of fake news has really remade America in its own image, in the image of fake news propaganda, which is anything but the Constitution, and it's everything. It's in its totality. It's fake news. It's a fake branch of government, is what it is. The fourth estate, if you will. The unholy alliance of Silicon Valley, the FANG companies, and the just entertainment, the medium of entertainment. I recently did an episode on what rap is. If you want to check that out, it's really you folks have no idea how much wiser you are for keeping up with americasmansman.com episodes. You're smarter than most congressmen, which I know is not a high bar these days, but it should be, and it will be, because the future leaders of America, America's man's men, are getting wise to all of the precepts, the principles, and the teachings which I bring to light in this series at americasmansman.com. So I thank you for investing the time and making yourself smarter and wiser for the benefit of for yourselves and your country. Here at americasmansman.com. By the way, if you're watching this somewhere else, please subscribe directly at americasmansman.com, because the other places where you watch these videos may suddenly vanish. This channel or this video may suddenly vanish, and you'll want to be connected to the source at americasmansman.com, so make sure you subscribe there by putting your email address at the top of the screen and hitting subscribe today. But do not argue with the fool, lest you become one. One of the big takeaways here, overtly, President Trump said, after being vindicated from the evil communists in Congress, led by demonic Nancy Pelosi, he said, well, there's two things we know about them. They're evil, they're very bad people, and he's right, and they stick together like glue. I would argue with the second takeaway there, because their ties are really they're much weaker than those of us who really believe in America and everything that we stand for. You notice how quickly, because the Dems, that's the fake news. That's the fake news projection. That's the fake news propaganda, the united front of the leftists. But if you dig beneath the thin veneer, you find that these people are really so erratic, because they are zeitgeist. Their internal clocks are set to the fake news zeitgeist of trivia. It's a story which is not consistent. It's a story which has no integrity, has no constitution, and by constitution, I don't mean the United States Constitution, but I mean it has no glue. They are kingdoms divided against themselves, like Catholicism, like American Catholicism, and so ultimately they will not stand. I wouldn't say that they're as united as the fake news makes them appear to be, but the third takeaway I want all of America's mansmen to get out of the bogus impeachment trial, and that's what it is. It's a lesser president, a lesser Republican even a Rick Santorum, because again he comes from this American Catholic construct, despite the legions of wisdom which are present in there. Or definitely Little Marco or Teddy Cruz or definitely Jeb Bush. These people don't have the constitution that our good President Donald Trump does, and they don't have the ability. They wouldn't have had the ability to recruit adequate talent. So it's a good thing, really, that none of them are president right now, and that we have our blessed President Donald Trump, who has wisdom, who has the wisdom, above all, really, of being able to navigate the fake news propaganda, which is America's chief enemy at this point in time. The enemy, I don't want to sound like one of those gulag people, because we know who the gulag team is. It's Team Democrat is what that is, but media really is an enemy of America. I don't want to say an enemy of the people, because here we are ruggedly individualistic. So maybe that's why that sounds a little bit. So I don't want to. But media is our enemy. It is domestic enemy of America number one. The media, the fake news media, and this is a case where a lesser president would have tried to capitalize upon the angst, the collective misery, the collective fake news instigated panic and blood pressure raising of the American people that the fake news is so good at, instigating wars within its own country. Is what the fake news does to earn a living. This is how the fake news profits off the misery of the American people. When America's succeeding, the fake news fails. It's an inversely proportional relationship. When America is suffering, that's when the fake news has their big payday, and they make bank for all their stockholders. Disney included, NBC, CBS, all of and definitely the Associated Press, communists, anti-American. And if you, again, you're better off if you hear something reported in the fake news. It's more likely to be a lie than if they had never reported anything at all. For that very reason, they're trying to tick you off. They're very skilled manipulators. They are, as Mitt Romney would say, that proverbial tar baby. That if you, the more you engage with it, the more covered in tar you become. That's what the tar baby that Mitt Romney talks about really is. It has nothing to do with racism. It's got everything to do with. It's got, as Disney well knows, Song of the South is really a great movie. But it was Walt Disney actually considered it his crown jewel, his life achievement. But this tar baby of the fake news is really it's epitomized in the bogus impeachment trial. Because like cults of the real American religion, which is a biblical one. I don't want to say it's necessarily exactly what the Puritans believe, but that is where we really derive our very successful, wisest among wise, exceptional government from. And it is riddled with trouble, but it is still the very best in the world. Does need to be cut down to size, and President Trump is doing a great job at working on that. Be great to balance the budget. It's not going to happen in this administration, probably, but we can pray for it. And we can get there eventually, maybe. Ronald Reagan I'm pretty sure he wanted to balance the budget. All the economists, I'll tell you, I went to Boston College, and you got all these economists saying, the way you make the GDP bigger is by spending more government money and taxing people. Yeah, I don't think so. Not right. But they tell you go to any college, all these expensive educations, receiving a lot of federal dollars. This is what they're going to teach. This is what they're going to teach the minions over there, so that they can, they can make bank off the misery of the American people. It's a very deeply entrenched communist fake news machine, but at America's mansman.com, we are putting an end to it slowly but surely, guided by Jesus Christ and our fake news literate President Donald J. Trump. So, a lot of Republicans would have responded like many Americans in the worst age in our history did to the fake news. Oh, gee, the fake news is saying this. What are we going to do? Oh, gee, the Democrats are saying he's a very, very bad man. We're going to impeach him. We're going to call witnesses. We're going to get a character witness. Talk about what a good man. No, and that's there's a temptation when you're not thinking clearly. When the fake news has goaded you, as the devil always tries to, into a sense of fury, that maybe that thief, who's trying to rob your business. If you're a small business owner, maybe he wants to fight with you, and maybe he's got a gun and you don't. Maybe he's trying to goad you into, and that's kind of what the Democrats have done here, and it's what the fake news has been doing for over a century. Has been using the artificial tool of electronic propaganda, a medium invented by the Russians' film editing techniques, to goad good Bible-believing, hard-working, really in a very grounded way, idealistic, not idealistic in the Quixotic way, but really in a very real way, really American soldiers through and through, every one of us citizens, people who would die for God, country, and family, and that's what we're all about here at americasmansman.com, God and country, just like the original pastors. But the fake news has goaded good Americans into silence. If you look up the spiral of silence theory, they've used artificial tools to trick our natural minds into believing that our fellow Americans are our enemy, when we have real enemies, the number one enemy of which is the fake news. We live in the best country in the world, and we've got the best leader we have had since Ronald Reagan at the very least. You want the rest of the world to fear you as we fear the good Lord Jesus Christ and our God. We Bible-believing, gun-clinging Americans. You want Kim Jong-un to be thinking before he presses that button to launch some kind of nuclear attack on some other nation. Well, gee, what's America going to do to us if we do that? That's the way you want it. That's the way you want it, and because there's no virtue in being a pussy when you're the leader of the free world, and there's no virtue in being a pussy if you're one of America's man's men. If you live in this country, we are the land of the free, the home of the brave, because we've got that manifest destiny. We've got the seeds of greatness within us, and we're always willing to use those for the good cause of advancing the gospel throughout the world, which is America's real foundational document, so foundational that it's implied in our history. You don't have to look very far to find all of the evidence of that. And we don't like Barack Obama suffered. He answered fools according to their folly. Terrorist Iran says, well, we stopped making nuclear weapons if you give us all this money to build more nuclear weapon. Barack Obama, okay, I'll send over the cash then. Sends over bales of cash. Okay, that's answering fools according to their folly. It's not necessary. And here our wise president with an excellent team of advisors like Christian J. Sekulow of the American Center for Law and Justice, the ACLJ, as compared with the evil anti-Christians litigating unjustly, the ACLU. The J. Sekulow, the Chief Justice of the American Center for Law and Justice, a man I've spoken to before on the air. You can find that at americasmansman.com. It was back in high school, but it's still kind of a fun listen. This is our Constitution as Americans. It's a Christian Constitution, and our mission as America is to advance the cause of liberty throughout the world, and that liberty is personified in the person of Christ, in which all the people who have kept this America together, kept this nation from being a nation divided against itself, truly, despite all the communist propaganda about, well, this is a time for Americans to be united. Why are the conservatives so upset? No. Our Constitution, our integrity, is the person of Jesus Christ that a better America does, has always, and will always believe in. And that Jesus Christ is what makes my country, your country, America's men's country, the land of the free and the home of the brave. For AmericasMansman.com, I'm Peter Vidala.